today is from Valerie Gagnon of Michigan Technological University. Valerie?
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to begin in a good way by first acknowledging that I'm attending this meeting today within the ancestral and contemporary homelands of the Anishinaabe, who reside throughout the Great Lakes region in both the United States and in Canada. The Lake Superior bands of Ojibwa, the Ottawa and Potawatomi, and also many others. And I also acknowledge my institution, Michigan Tech. We are centrally located within the 1842 treaty ceded territory, which means that we share our lands and waters and responsibilities with Ojibwa nations in Keweenaw Bay and Lac Vieux Desert, Lac Ray, Lac de Flambeau, St. Croix and Bad River, Red Cliff, Sokagon Mole Lake, Fond du Lac, Mille Lacs, and Sandy Lake. And finally, I acknowledge our many more than human relatives. So those with 2 legs and 4, those with fins and roots and wings, all who call this place their home and have done so since time immemorial. And so for more than a decade, much of my work is rooted within the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, and as well as other Ojibwa Great Lakes nations. The core of my work is in fish, risk, and health. And we really work on a number of projects exploring socio-ecological relationships, food sovereignty initiatives and practices, and Indigenous knowledge and governance in this region. So I do appreciate the invitation to share today. I really took that 2 slides, 2 minutes, like super seriously. Yes, as I was introduced, I am at the Great Lakes Research Center at Michigan Tech. And I decided to focus this guidance today on important lessons for engaging with, by, as research partnerships. And as you recognize, much of my experience is within Great Lakes tribal nations. And so these lessons really apply before, during, and after engagement as an ongoing process, which we have heard about today. And this always requires doing some homework. And so the first lesson that I've learned is that above all, prioritize land and life. It really is about, in thoughtful, intentional ways, how does your work reflect land and life? And also be deliberate, make it evident, emphasize those connections between land and life. And I think about my work in terms of using academic and scientific tools, methods, and resources for the protection, restoration, and revitalization of land and life. And second, I created long ago these 4 rules of engagement. They're like for myself. I have shared them with others. And they really are to know your topic and content, know your project, know your stakeholders as well as your rights holders, and know yourself. When you're in engagement with stakeholders and community members and rights holders, you are their lens into all that you're trying to do. And so, having a good sense of your topic and project, even if you don't have all the answers, knowing where to find them or who to put them in touch with is going to be really important. And then knowing yourself, each of us has, different strengths and gifts, but we also have weaknesses, things that we always need to be working on. And so knowing that about ourselves, what we may or may not want to tackle or engage in is always a good idea. And finally, I did put a link over here on the side. I've just compiled some of my favorite different resources for engaging with Indigenous communities in the Great Lakes region, but also relevant to other regions as well. Thank you.
Great. We have a minute for questions for Valerie, if anybody has some. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to, we have about 7 minutes for general questions. Also, for if anybody has questions for Jessica or Megna or Kristen on their presentations that we didn't get to address after their presentation.
And I have one, but actually for Val. In engaging Indigenous communities and those with rights holders, do you mix those groups? Do you treat them separately? How do you engage all of them effectively in respectful and thoughtful ways? I'm just curious on how you approach that.
Yeah, we have been engaged with groups that included non-tribal members as well, alongside tribal nation folks. And when you really think about there's this term stakeholders, right? And it's become incredibly problematic when working with tribal and First Nations. And so there, in my opinion, is really a good way to think about everyone as rights holders. And that isn't just applying to humans, but also thinking about the rights of others who are not human as well. So the term stakeholder, I'm sure there's a whole literature on that about why that's problematic. And so I just try to encourage people to expand that language to be inclusive of rights holders. It'll lend you a lot of more credibility, I think, when you're approaching different groups.
And Val, we had a request on chat that if you could please put the link to resources in the chat.
Sure.
Thank you.